Hello, you're listening to Drawn to the Flame, a podcast and now a sometime live show for fans of Arkham Horror, the card game. I'm your host, Frank, and today, as ever, I'm joined by...
It's me, Peter. Hello, Frank.
Hi, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm going to unveil our faces, so stand by.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant.
There we are.
Hello. We do the podcast thing to start and then actually pull back the veil. Yeah. So we have a hugely packed show today for our little slot at the UK Games Expo. We're both a little bit overexcited, I think, about doing this. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in. It's really, really exciting. So what we're going to do just quickly is tell you who we are and what we're going to be doing, and then we'll dive in. Peter, who are we?
Well, we're Drawn to the Flame. You did the intro at the top of the hour. We do a podcast specifically dedicated to Arkham Horror, the card game. We talk about some topics around the game, but I think we've got a pretty packed episode of juicy Arkham Horror, the card game content specifically. We also run events. We're running a couple of events at the UK Games Expo, so we're going to talk about those as well. And yeah, we've been doing this for 3 years now, Frank?
Yeah, 3 years. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I like that chat even said just some Lovecraftian terrors to calm you all. And I was thinking, we're not Lovecraftian terrors. That's a bit harsh, chat.
Was that just as I unveiled the webcams, was it? Was that what?
Yeah, exactly. Just our two faces and screaming in chat as we appear. Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, and we're in separate places, which is why we've got two separate cameras. This works fine if it's a podcast. You can assume we're in the same room, but it's a little bit harder on a live show. If you don't know anything about Arkham Horror and want to find out more, go check out the 33rd episode of our podcast. So Drawn to the Flame, episode 33. That's an introduction to us, to the game, to why you should listen to us, and all of that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to talk very quickly about how to play the Blob that ate everything online and a little guide of the software we're using. And then we're going to dive in with some card reveals. First from the Innsmouth conspiracy, where we've got cards to show off from that. Then we're going to talk about the starter decks, and we've got cards to show off from that as well. And then if we've got time, we're also going to talk about our sort of top tips for playing the Blob that ate everything, because there's a game of that coming up. So I hope that's enough stuff to keep people entertained. If you're new to Arkham or don't know very much about it, please stay tuned anyway, and you can ask questions as well or whatever in the chat. And maybe you'll like some of the art you see and think, oh, I'm going to check out that game a bit more. We'll see, I guess. Have I forgotten anything?
No, that sounds good. That sounds good. We've got one of our fans is trying to heckle us in the chat, but he's getting a lot of sincere answers. So I hope he feels he's asking when the Keyforge panel is. So I hope he feels rightfully embarrassed.
Yeah, he should be.
Bro, well, let's quickly do the Blob guide, because I know there's probably some folks who might be thinking of playing in the Blob or are have signed up to the Blob and don't know exactly what to do. They'll be in the chat. I'm going to put the pictures up, Frank, and you're going to talk through the various stages. This will be really quick because it's really easy to do. So if you're not playing, just stick around, bear with us for a minute. We want to make sure people who are playing get to join in. And very briefly, this is a multiplayer version of the Arkham Horror, or multi-group version. It's always multiplayer. Meaning that lots of players in different groups are all fighting the same Blob, the Blob that ate everything, and everyone contributes towards a central health pool on the Blob. It's really good fun. Let's jump into this quick guide. Cool. If you want to run through this, Frank.
Yeah.
So this is the first bit you come to when you log on to Arkham Cards, I think.
Yeah. So it's pretty much a blank screen, and all you'll see on Arkham Cards.
Ooh. Sorry, Frank, I've lost you. Oh dear. Well, this was working fine all morning.
Can chat hear me?
Yeah, can
hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. Sorry, that was my fault. Probably my fault. Sorry, go again.
Okay. So when you arrive on Arkham Cards, you can see these two links to the Saturday Blob and the Sunday Blob, and you just click the one that you want to attend. Next image.
Okay, next image. That's up.
I'm just waiting for it to feed through. So it just gives you the details in case you're not sure that you've clicked the right event, and you just click the big green button, log in to register, which is also very straightforward. And it'll ask you to sign in either with an email address or using Google. So that's pretty straightforward as well. And it takes you straight through to the next image where you get to confirm how many players are on your table, and you need to provide some kind of a name to say that you're playing, but it says Discord handle because we've been linking by Discord, but also if you put a name, Frank from London, I'll probably be able to work out who it is. So yeah, so that's very straightforward.
That should be next image.
Cool. And then just before the event begins, there's a half-hour window for you to confirm registration. So if it turns out you're going to play 4-player and you're now playing 2-player, or it turns out you were going to play solo and you've suddenly got 2 friends to play, whatever it is, you can come and adjust the number of how many players you're playing, and you click that confirm registration button. And as long as you do that in the 30 minutes before the event begins, it's all fine, because then that determines how big the blob is and how many clues we need and things like that. So that's all confirmed. I just see one of the questions, are these blob games going to be streamed? We might be doing live commentary as they go on, but because they're being played all around the world, we probably won't be streaming anything in particular because they're all sort of separate places. And the Sunday game, we've just been asked, is 10:30 a.m. is registration for 11 a.m. start. So cool. When the game begins, you'll have this page here, and I've had to take a couple of images to show you. It shows you how much time's remaining. It shows me how many people are playing. And you'll also see announcements appear when it plays, and it'll show you how much health the blob has. So you can quickly look at this. So what I suggest you do while you're playing is have a browser window open on the page, and you can then see what's going on very easily. And maybe the last image, please, Peter.
I think there's one more after this.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think I just scrolled down all the way through.
Yeah. And then we want the last
one.
So
here's another image where you can see if you deal damage to the blob, you can come and fill in the damage and press send. If you use a countermeasure, you can come and do that. If you find clues, you can do that. And there's that big green button if you use a countermeasure. So countermeasures are shared across all of the tables playing the blob. So if you use one, if we were playing in person, you'd hold your hand up and say, I've used countermeasure, but we're not playing in person. So you click that big green button and that triggers it. And that's basically all you need to know for the blob. It's actually amazingly well-designed little site and very straightforward. You can play from the privacy of your own home. You can play online with friends. And when we're allowed to meet again in the future, we'll definitely be organizing a massive blob event together.
Frank, you're just sorry. Technical. This is on my end. Your webcam is just frozen. So if you turn your webcam off and on again on the call, hopefully that'll work. Yes, perfect.
Okay, cool.
Okay, bro. So that's the admin done, I guess. So we on to the.
That's the admin done. We're 1 minute ahead of schedule as well.
Amazing. Right, should we go on to the exciting part and we'll look at some of the spoilers?
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, you're still coming in a bit choppy, to be honest. Frank.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just leave the call and rejoin.
Okay.
Or is that going to mess you up?
No. Please do that. I'd rather it was smooth for our listeners. Right, well, I should have been filling there. Sorry, folks. Right. So, for folks who don't know, the Innsmouth Conspiracy is the incoming cycle of cards for Arkham Horror, the card game. It is set in and around Innsmouth. The Innsmouth Conspiracy. So we know bits and bobs of the story. We know the names of the packs. We know a handful of cards, and FFG have very kindly sent us a couple of player cards we can talk about, right? And then another treat we've got after that as well. So, should we share the first one?
Just before we go in, can you hear me, Peter?
I can hear you, yes.
Can chat hear Frank again?
Yes, they'll be able to hear.
Yeah, we hope so. Cool. Yeah, we're ready. We've been stalling too long.
Yes. Right, so
Here we go.
Shall I read the first one out?
Please do, yeah.
Right, okay, first one. We have the Sword Cane. Yeah, I should have done a drum roll there. This is a 2-cost asset. It has item, relic, weapon, and melee traits. Playing Sword Cane does not provoke attacks of opportunity. And then we have a reaction ability. After Sword Cane enters play, immediately trigger its action ability without paying its cost. And then it has an action ability, action, exhaust Sword Cane, fight/evade. You may use your willpower in place of your combat or agility for this attack or evasion attempt. So there's a lot in there, but really this is just a kind of a whoosh with your Sword Cane, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, the big question I have is, how uncomfortable would it be to hold on to that top of that cane? It's got teeth on the cane and horns. It looks like the most horrible thing. I think that's the end you use for fending off other people, right?
Right. You dop them in the face with the pointy bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is a cool card. What do you make
grotesque.
of it, Frank?
Yeah, this has a load to unpack. Yeah, so you play it for 2, but you immediately get the action as well. So it's almost like playing an event, but it stays in play. So it's a fight evade event that allows you to use your willpower, but it hangs around as well, which I just find, really difficult to pass and quite exciting as well. We know that the mystic in the Intimate Conspiracy is Dexter Drake, the magician. So this feels like it straight away synergizes really nicely with him.
Yeah.
How about you, Peter? What do you make of it?
Absolutely. So, can you just recap Dexter's ability? Because I think it's quite interesting with this card. We know Dexter. We've seen him officially revealed.
As a free trigger, he can discard an asset to play another asset, reducing its cost by 1. And it has to be another asset that doesn't have the same name.
Yes.
So having assets you can play fast or in a pinch and then shift to new assets is kind of all his things. He's got that prestidigitation thing of things disappearing and appearing in and out of his hands. And this, I think, feeds into that, right? Because you can whip this into play when there's an enemy on you, evade the enemy, and then discard the Sword Cane and pull out a weapon or pull out a shriveling or something like that. You can use this as a quick transition.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It would. So I guess the comparison maybe is to something like Blinding Light, or maybe not ethereal form so much. So Blinding Light, you pay 2, you get the evade using your willpower instead of your combat, your agility. It does deal damage, but that's a 2 cost and it's a 1 shot. So this could be, even if you discard it straight away for another item, it's a fast 1 cost evade, right?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
And what I'm trying, the fact of it is, it's an event that has the asset type, which is the weird thing about it, right? You're using it for an event-like ability, but then because it's an asset, you're also triggering Dexter's ability, which you couldn't do with Blinding Light. You couldn't evade and then also use his ability. Yeah, I think we're trying to say the same thing.
Yes,
it's quite a strange thing to pass because that's quite a new thing. If you were just playing Sword Cane and anyone else, I like the idea that you could just have it in hand and play it reactively if you've suddenly got an enemy on you need to get away from. But Dexter makes it so much more valuable because he then... So it seems like it really shines in Dexter.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Just, the idea that you keep it in hand ready to deal with an enemy is kind of tasty, I think, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
And the art is amazing.
The art is really, really fantastic. Would you keep this around, do you think, just as a... Right, so the other thing, is what was I going to say? I think it's having a ability, so you can keep this in your hand until you need it. That's what I'm trying to say. So with a weapon, typically you need to have it in play before before the enemy appears. With this, you can wait until the exact point you do need it and then play it, which is a real it's a real kind of tempo saving, because you might never need it. You might never need it as a mystic. Say if you're a clue gathering mystic, you can just be walking around happily picking up clues and have this in your hand ready to use it when you need it. Don't need to take that hit to your tempo to set it up before the enemy appears, or when the enemy appears, worry about taking the attack of opportunity to play your weapon. I really like it for that as well.
So enemies don't know that you're creeping around with your sword cane sort of under your cloak, ready to reveal it.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that then when you do play it, because it doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity, you're probably using it, but you then get to use it anyway immediately as part of the deal. So it's even if it just had that first line of text, playing it doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity, I think we'd be quite positive about it. But it also combines the playing of it with the action ability, which is just really efficient then.
Yeah.
That for a single action, you get to trigger it as though it was already on the table. So yeah, and Scribe says in chat, it's great for pinging single damage and saving shriveling charges, which is true.
Yeah, for
we've talked
some
about
rats
3 health enemies
like that.
Yeah, 1 health enemies that you just need to deal with quickly. This is just a single action. You whip out the sword cane and whack a rat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Well, should we go on to the next card? We've got another one. We're spoiled, positively spoiled. Yeah.
Yes, we've got another one.
Perfect. Right. Do you want to read this one?
So I think I'm reading this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. On you go.
So this is Rite of Sanctification, a 0-cost guardian asset with an intellect icon. It's ritual and blessed. Seal up to 5 blessed tokens. If Rite of Sanctification has no tokens sealed on it, discard it.
Oh, I think we might have lost Frank again. This is
Reaction.
Really frustrating.
When an investigator at your location plays a card, exhaust Rite of Sanctification and release. Oh no.
It's okay. We can hear you. Sorry about this, folks.
Yeah?
This is literally the first time we've had issues with
an
with
investigator. Yeah. Of course, it's when the audience are there. When an investigator at your location plays a card, exhaust Rite of Sanctification and release a token seal. Peter, what do you make of it?
I'm just going to read that again because I think you dropped out during the call there. So it says, reaction, when an investigator at your location plays a card, exhaust Rite of Sanctification and release a chaos token sealed on it. Reduce the cost of that card by 2. This is really interesting because I think... so blessed tokens, for anyone who doesn't know, are tokens that are being introduced in the Innsmouth Conspiracy. And it's a token that goes into your bag and gives you like a one-off +2 to your test. But as soon as you reveal it, so you reveal it from the bag, it's discarded, you get the +2, and then you reveal another token. And I know a lot of people have been running the maths on it and thinking, ultimately, like that, the maths don't work out that favourably. You need a lot of blessed tokens in the bag for it to have much of an effect. But I think what's really interesting about Rite of Sanctification is that it shows a fringe benefit for having those blessed tokens in the bag. So the blessed tokens aren't simply used as a boost to the skill value. And I think that's really interesting about it. And if we look at someone who would be well suited to take it, I think we look at Sister Mary. And Sister Mary, again, we've seen her in some of the official announcements. What Sister Mary does is she starts the game with, is it 3 blessed tokens two blessed tokens in the bag, and then at the end of each of her turns, she puts another blessed token in the bag. So actually, she could quite quickly, if she plays this second turn, she can straight away seal 3 blessed tokens on this Rite of Sanctification, and that's like 6 resources worth of value there, right?
6 horses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this even. You could play this even turn 1 and just seal 2, and then immediately play another card and reduce the cost of that by 2 straight away. And then the following turn, play your second card, and you've made 4 resources out of Rite of Sanctification straight away. That's better than Emergency Cash, just straight away. It's just slower. So even with Sister Mary turn 1, this seems quite good. And then if you're willing to wait, you can get up to 10 resources on the Rite of Sanctification, which I really like. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
The question will be, and I see chat asking this, how quickly can you get blessed tokens into the chaos bag to make this worthwhile if you're not Sister Mary? And we don't yet know how much blessed stuff there will be yet, so that's still to be discovered, I suppose.
Yeah. And just one little wrinkle I want to add. So this card, when you use the blessed token that's on it, you release it, you don't discard that chaos token. So the blessed token then goes back into the bag. So actually, you're double dipping on the value of each blessed token. So blessed token is +2 to a test, but also it's -2 resources on an asset you're playing.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. You said that when we saw it. Yeah. So you can fill the bag with blessed tokens, borrow some of them to generate resources, and when you're done with that, they go back and there's still a chance to see them. So yeah, it's not an either or, which is really good. And you might even have it where, as you said, the maths works out that you're not too bothered about hitting the blessed tokens, but you'd like lots of them in the bag for other reasons. And one of those reasons might be that you're going to play Rite of Sanctification and make a lot of resources out of it. So yeah, it's a really cool card. Really strange, fun card. Yeah. And it's blessed traded, which means Mateo can take it.
Yes, I was waiting for someone to say that. Yeah, absolutely.
If chat aren't going to say it, yeah.
Is this the first arcane slot we've seen in Guardian?
No, I know the spiritual resolve in the arcane.
Yeah,
slot.
And actually the sword uses an arcane slot. The enchanted blade uses an arcane slot.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, double slotted. Yeah.
But still,
I mean, the other
exciting.
thing worth noting is, even without Sister Mary, this is resources in Guardian, and that's always something worth bearing in mind. I think that's one of the ways that faction is held back. We've heard from the designers that's one of the ways they curb the power of Guardian, is they make their cards expensive and don't give them resources. So anything that helps you afford to play your cards seems good to me.
And the other thing, maybe I'm belaboring the point here, but I feel one of the cards I've always been really impressed by in Guardian, more so in practice than in theory, is Ever Vigilant. Especially when you can put Ever Vigilant on Stick to the Plan, because it lets you that opening hand. You know you're going to get Ever Vigilance. You know you're going to be able to play it from your opening hand, and it means you can really stack your starting hand with assets you want to play, and then Ever Vigilant is just insane value if you manage to get 3 out at a time. This has a bit of that same feeling to it, especially in Sister Mary, that she can kind of load it up with resource value earlier in the game, and then later on in the game those blessed tokens are back in the bag for the bag to be friendlier as the scenario goes on.
Do you know what it's a bit like? It's a bit like an inverse investments, where this is sort of ticking down, dripping resources to you over a few turns, where investments is ticking up and then giving you a big payoff. I like everything you've just said about Guardian and getting this set up. I think Sister Mary players might even play at turn 1, as I said, but other players, you're probably playing this turn 3 or 4, and then it's seeing you through the scenario.
Yeah. I think it's a harder ask in a non-Sister Mary investigator, just because you're going to need a lot of effort on. Well, like I think it was Toothball in the chat said, it really depends on how potent those cards which add blessed tokens are. If they're plentiful, maybe it's worth dedicating quite a chunk of your deck space to adding them. But for initially, I think Sister Mary is going to be the home for this.
Yes, I agree. She gets an extra bless every single turn, so she's just sort of ticking up blesses, even if you're playing 4-player and everyone's taking multiple tests a turn, and removing the blessed tokens from the bag. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to move on. Does that suit you, Peter?
Yeah, it does indeed. So what I'm going to do is hide these two pictures. So if anyone wants to screenshot these to share, please do it now. Or forever hold your peace. We'll try and put these up somewhere logical, whether it's on the subreddit or on our Facebook page or something like that, so folks can see them in all their glory after we're finished here. But yeah, so
I'll add them to Arkham DB as well.
Oh yeah.
That's my evening job.
Friends with a man in the know. Right, so we do have another treat now from the Innsmouth Conspiracy. Do you want to introduce this, Frank? Or should I?
Sure. So I think this is something that's never been done before.
Literally never been done before.
That we don't just have player cards to announce. We also have 2 encounter cards to announce from the Innsmouth Conspiracy. But because this is a narrative game, we're aware that some players of Arkham might not want to see encounter cards. I think it's safe to say that these won't spoil too much. But
no.
we reached out to FFG and they've given us some encounter cards to reveal as well, so that we can dive in and talk a little bit more of the conspiracy. So that's your fair warning for a different kind of announcement, and we're going to dive in and just talk about them briefly, because why not?
Bro, okay, well, let's do this one first. Boom. Should I read this one? It's my turn, isn't it?
It is your turn, yeah.
Dive in. Someone in the chat's pointing that out. I think you've said that 3 times so far this episode, Frank. Right.
Yeah, I'm all about the Innsmouth theme here.
Dive in is the new delve deeper. Okay, right. We have a treachery here. This is Undertow, and it is a hazard. Revelation: if your location is unflooded, Undertow gains Surge. Otherwise, put Undertow into play in your threat area. Forced: after you move, take 2 damage and 2 horror. Discard Undertow. A free action: discard 1 card from your hand. Test 3 combat or 3 agility to fight the pull of the tides. If you succeed, discard Undertow. Well, what do you make of that?
Yeah. So if people aren't sure about flooding, Flood is a new token that's coming in Innsmouth. So locations can be partially flooded or fully flooded, and also can be unflooded. So yeah, if you're being canny and have avoided being in a wet location, this just surges. But otherwise, I think it's really cruel.
Have you
really cruel?
I like your use of wet location there.
Yeah.
I was in the sea. It was a wet location.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If your location is flooded, Peter, it's probably
it is
wet.
No, I can't argue.
Yeah.
I'm unable to argue with that. Exactly. Well,
yeah,
this is it's brutal. This 2 damage and 2 horror. That feels like really bad on a treachery, right?
Yeah, that's a real kick in the teeth, or flood in the clothes. Yeah,
wet in the face. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then to get rid of it, it's a pretty stiff test. To test 3 agility or combat, and you have to lose a card just to initiate the test. So if this card ends up in your threat area, you're losing something, whether it's damage and horror or a card.
You have So some Scribe in the chat is saying free trigger, so you can do it as many times as you want. However, you discard the card regardless.
Yeah.
So you have to discard the card before you take the test. So yeah, you can take it as many times as you want, but only as many times as you have cards in your hand to pitch to the Undertow. Yeah.
So it's costing you something. Maybe not actions, but it's always going to cost you something. Yeah.
And I guess worth pointing out as well, so someone else can trigger this free action as well. So someone else can help pull you out. Yeah. So we might see a new role for all of our enemy specialist investigators, those with high combat or high agility, where they're also spending their time wading through semi-flooded locations, like pulling all of the weak characters out of the water. Like, you've got flooded again, come on, caught in the undertow. And you can see Silas, for instance, who has 4 combat and 4 agility and normally has loads of cards. He's probably quite good at handling the undertow and helping appropriately enough.
Appropriately enough, exactly. But then someone like, say, Daisy, she really doesn't want to take 2 damage. She doesn't care about the horror. But she also doesn't really want to be testing combat or agility 3. That's pretty mean.
That is very mean. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And
So it seems pretty nice.
yeah, I think someone else has pointed out that it's one of 6 as well.
Yeah.
So
6.
there'll be numerous of these.
Yeah.
So we've got those to look forward to. Okay, do you want to go to the next one?
Please do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Right, we've got yet another card. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a drum roll. Look at this, lad. This is you to read out.
Yeah. The Loiger. It's not unique, which is quite scary. 3 fight, 5 health, 4 evade. It's a monster. It preys on the fewest cards in hand. It's aloof and a hunter, so it's not going to rush up and fight you, but it is going to follow you around. While an investigator at Loiger's location has no cards in hand, Loiger loses aloof. It has a forced effect at the end of the enemy phase. Each investigator at Loiger's location or a connecting location discards 1 random card from their hand. It's victory 1 and it hits for a damage and a horror.
This is pretty nasty. I mean, we'll jump straight up to the top of it, and it's got 5 health. As we've said, Frank, many a time, 5 health is the new 3 health.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sure we've said that before. It's always the odd number is always an awkward number to deal with, because I mean, on this you'll probably need to do 2 damage and then find a 3 damage source of damage.
Yeah.
That's nasty. I mean, 3 fight isn't nothing. 4 evade makes it quite hard to get rid of as well. I guess the blessed relief is that it usually has aloof, though it is kind of worming its way after you.
And it's this weird thing where if you decide, well, it's aloof, we're going to ignore it, it's going to follow you around, making you lose cards at random.
Yeah.
Which is really horrid. And if you decide, I'm going to deal with this thing, you're going to have to spend an action engaging it and then try and do 5 damage, which is horrible. Yeah. I actually really like the interplay between Undertow and Loiger.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah.
So it feels like maybe this is a theme that's going to come out in the next cycle, right? Based on the 2 cards we've got here, that there's this element of getting closer to drowning as you lose cards, or kind of giving up hope as you lose cards, right? That's like representing your ability to fight something off. And as the Loiger is kind of hunting you, it slowly saps your will to avoid it, and then eventually, boom, it's on you as soon as you've given up.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you've got that fear of like, I've run out of options, the Loiger can smell it and is on top of you and starts attacking you, which is, horrible. And of course, if it's engaged you because you have no cards, you're probably going to be in a bit of a tough spot to try and deal 5 damage.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got no other options.
Here's a question for you, Frank. So the forced ability, at the end of the enemy phase, each investigator at Loiger's location or a connecting location discards 1 random card from their hand. That doesn't seem to impact Patrice much, right?
No.
However, at the end of her turn, in the upkeep phase, does Patrice discards all remaining cards in her hand, right?
Yes, exactly.
So does that mean this guy will always lose aloof and engage you if you're Patrice?
Yeah. Because the effect that cares about it is while an investigator has no cards, and there's a moment in Patrice's turn where she always has no cards.
Yeah, well, that sounds pretty cruel.
Yeah, that's horrible.
So as long as Patrice stays a location away from the Loiger, she's fine. Yeah. As long as she doesn't end up near it.
Yeah, precisely. She does not want to deal with the Loiger. Yeah, I think it's a beefy enemy that is challenging us in a couple of different ways, which I really like. I even like the idea that you could be quite cunning with this, and the Loiger hunts one person for a while because they have the fewest cards in hand, and then if they manage to draw up and someone else gets fewer cards, it'll then change direction as long as the investigators are equidistant and go for the other player. So you could do something about trying to kind of get away from the Loiger, and one of you gets more afraid and has fewer cards, and then another one. There's something going on there. Yeah, and I just really like the idea that there's no situation where this isn't something you have to deal with, because either it's sapping you cards or it's coming for you and fighting you, which is just like Undertow, right? Either you're taking damage in horror or you're losing cards.
I would love for that to be a theme in this cycle, just more hand management. Thinking about keeping cards in your hand, what cards are disposable. One of the things I've always loved about Arkham Horror is the icons on the cards, so every card has that double purpose. And this adds an extra wrinkle to that calculation. Every card is either it's food for a treachery, it's icons, or it's something that you might be able to play.
And picture the horrible situation where you've got rid of the cards that you think are less important to things like Undertow, and then the Loiger shows up and starts attacking your hand for the things that you've kept hold of that are more important. You've got no choice but to lose them. For me, it raises, this is something you've mentioned a few times. What are the cards in hand in Arkham Horror? What do they represent? And there's this freedom in the game to say, are they ideas, or are they inspiration, or are they the tricks you've learned, or are they the gear you've brought with you, your weapons, your leather jacket, whatever it is. Again, like if you're having cards taken out of your hand, it's another time for us to think about that theme. I really like that theme of trying to work out what cards in hand are.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Right. Well, should we move on to our next subject? I'm seeing people are there's loads of questions like firing into the chat here. Alpha Rats Markab. I don't know where to put the breaks in that name. Is saying, constant discard can feel bad to the player. If you've packed your deck with cards you want to play and then you're not able to play them, that's a pretty feels bad, isn't it? So I guess it's whether they can strike a balance between that. I think there's something, that feeling of desperation of trying to get enough cards and play the ones you need. I do quite like that in games. That's why one of the reasons I like playing Patrice, because I like trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the random selection of cards I've got given every turn. But what you don't want to be is in a constant state of hopelessness, because that's not very much fun to play.
And I think I've already jumped one step further than that, which is that I don't want to be in that state of hopelessness with the Loiger. So if I see this card, I'm already going to be trying to kill it. Which is that's one solution for your hand being continually attacked, is kill the Loiger, and then that won't happen. So there is a way out of it. It's just, it might force you to do something you weren't planning to do in the scenario. I think kill the Loiger is going to be like sort of a 2020s kill Jester.
Yeah.
Kill Loiger.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, we've got, I'll tell you what, Kasasag Jewelry, I believe, Kasasagi Jewelry, has said they've recently got into Arkham and need to get some expansions. If you stick around, we're about to talk about something that might be quite interesting to you. I'm going to jump back onto the webcams. I think if you turn your webcam off, Frank.
I did, while it was stuttering. I'll just turn it back on.
We'll see how it works, and if it starts to stutter again, we can turn them back off.
It just looks like I'm really small and in a little circular, looking through a porthole. Oh, here we are.
Which is how we normally record.
Exactly.
Both sticking our heads through a porthole.
From my submarine, exactly.
Cool. What are we going to talk about next, Frank?
So now we're going to talk about the Investigator starter decks, which are a new product for Arkham that are coming out, we believe, in 6 days' time, at the time of recording. And the starter decks are a pack you can buy that just has player cards in it and an investigator. And so it's already a pre-built deck to play with a new investigator and cards that you can upgrade for the deck. So you've got that experience. If you're trying to get new into the game and you want to know who to play and what deck you should have for them, the deck's already built for you and you're ready to play. Have I summed that up properly?
Yeah. You have. Yeah. I guess one of the questions is where we wanted to start from talking about the starter decks, and what we don't want to do is alienate anyone who's an Arkham pro and knows exactly what these decks are, has kept up to date with all the news. What we want to do is talk about them in an interesting way, but in a way that includes both players who are long-standing and new players. And I guess our springboard for that is who are these decks for? What are they for?
Yeah,
because I think it's one of the first products I've seen established players saying, well, I'm actually not going to buy this when it comes out. I'm going to pick them up at some point down the line, maybe. So I guess maybe that's a good place to start. Who are these decks for, Frank?
Yeah, and like I said, it's that idea that they're maybe for a newer player who's looking to explore the game more, but doesn't want to buy a whole cycle or doesn't know which cycle to buy. And they're also, we've said before, that idea that if you're at your local game shop or a local gaming night, which seems so weird to say.
Yeah, remember that.
Yeah, but picture the time when that was the case, when you could turn up to your Thursday night of Arkham or Tuesday night or whatever night it was of the week. There might be people playing Arkham and you'd want to jump in and play, but if you don't have any cards, you're gambling on someone else having a deck ready for you to play. Whereas these starter decks, you can buy one. I think they're £12, maybe. About £12, I think.
They're the usual kind of starter, the pack price, with the Mythos pack price kind of thing.
And tear them open and you're ready to play and join in. And there's one for each faction of the 5 factions in the game as well. So they, you might be fairly new to the game and go, you know what, I love Guardians. And then the Guardian starter deck might be the next place you want to go, because it gives you a load more Guardian cards, a new Guardian Investigator to play as, and really plays into, I suppose, the theme of what it means to be a Guardian.
Yeah, and just before we dive too deep into that, Frank. I said dive deep. I think I just want to touch briefly on 2 other things, so that the similarity, I guess, to 2 other products, one of which is Keyforge. Here's your shout out, Toothball. Where you can just buy a deck. You can buy one Keyforge deck and then you play, and then buying more doesn't give you a competitive advantage other than a higher chance of getting a good deck. It's not like you could buy one deck and then tweak it with other cards. So Keyforge had a really, really low barrier to entry. Just buy a deck and then you're playing. And Marvel as well, Marvel Champions, where again, though it's an LCG, so obviously you collect the cards and then you can construct your own decks. Deck building is, well, I don't want to have an angry mob of Marvel Champions fans after me, but it's simplified to an extent, in that you pick one faction alongside the core cards you get for the hero, and they come out as complete decks. So you can buy a hero deck and then play that. That's your deck that you play the game with. Whether it's necessarily a particularly tuned deck, I don't know. I don't know enough about Marvel Champions to make that judgment. But I think it's just that little bit of a lower barrier to entry, which I think is one of the things that's always cited as something about LCGs as they're more mature. It stops more people getting into them.
Absolutely. There's the promise that every pack is fixed card distribution and you know what you're getting is great early on, and then it's really daunting if you come to the game 2 years, 3 years after it's come out, because there's so much product out there and there are players who have it all and talk about it all, and you're going, where do I begin? Where do I go from here? And at least Arkham is a cooperative game, so you're not trying to join a competitive scene and feeling alienated, but also it's story-led, so you can say, right, I'm picking a new story and I'm going down that path, and you can buy it in kind of units. And the starter decks are slightly different from that. They're saying, well, actually, I don't want to buy a new story. I want to buy more cards for the faction I'm really excited about. And they give you a way of buying cards that are sort of themed and fit together well, maybe have good combinations. I can see in chat someone saying some of the starter deck cards are awesome for current players, pulling so awesome combos. Yeah, exactly that. They might have cards in them that are great if you're a new player, but also might appeal to a more experienced player because they really want to try out something fun or different or thematic.
And I think this leads on to kind of what we want, the kind of more meaty discussion we wanted to have about the factions themselves, because I think one of the good, one of the best things about the starter decks is that the new investigators and the cards in the deck are really focused on the one of the core strengths of the faction that they're based in. Should we dive into one of the factions, Frank, or should we keep on chatting a bit more?
I'll just say just before we begin, fans of the show will know that I like to first look packs, and I've actually first looked every single starter deck before this. So if you're still a fan of first looks, they're definitely coming. They'll come along with release. And so some of my thoughts here are not first look thoughts, they're second look thoughts. Just I know there's a small portion of our listeners who really like that side of what we do, which is the joy of discovery and the joy of tearing open a pack and enjoying it. But apart from that, I'm ready to dive in. So,
okay, we'll jump into the first pack here. So what we've done is as I was saying, but before we dive into this, I think each of the starter decks picks up a particular theme core to that faction and gives you a load of player cards that both tie into that tie into that theme, whether they're reinforcing it or they're helping you profit from that theme as well. I think the Survivor Investigator is a really good example of this. Do you briefly want to remind us how her ability works, Frank?
Yeah, so she's got a reaction ability which reads that when you fail a skill test, you get an extra action, and it's once per round. You get an extra action in the investigation phase. So if she fails, she gets an action. So she could fail a test in Mythos, or she could fail an action during her turn, and she'd get another action. So she's rewarded for failing.
Yes. What we've done is we've tried to pick a couple of cards from each of the decks that we feel really emphasize the core themes of the starter deck and some of the core themes of the factions they come from. And I think that's where the appeal to the more established players is going to come from, really, because there's some really did I call them a cherry on top the other day, Frank?
Yeah,
some of the cards in these decks are like just the kind of the crowning jewel of the themes in the faction. If you want to build a deck based around that.
Well, and in fact, you called the Investigator the cherry on top.
Oh, did I?
And I think that's a really nice way of looking at it as well. So we'll use a specific example, so we're not talking all in generalizations. Survivor have this mechanic that's all around. If they fail something, they might profit in some way. So they can mitigate failure better than the other factions. And if you play as Stella Clark, the new Survivor Investigator, not only can you use those effects, but you also get an extra action. So you're really rewarded for failing, and she really can pull through that. And so, we've pulled out a couple of Survivor cards just to emphasize that theme. I'm a really big fan of this new card, Grit Your Teeth, which was announced by FFG. When you fail a skill test, you can play it and you get +1 to your skills for the remainder of the round. So it's, to me, a really good illustration of getting stronger through failure, I suppose. Learning from your mistakes, that kind of thing. And then we've also chosen Dumb Luck. I'm just going to jump straight into the other as well, if that's all right with you.
Oh, yeah, please do. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a leveled up version of Dumb Luck. It's got those 2 experience pips in the top left. And this says, after you fail a skill test by 3 or less during an evasion attempt against a non-elite enemy, place that enemy on the bottom of the encounter deck. So long-time players of the game will know that there's a Dumb Luck level 0. This is an upgraded version. And the differences here are that it widens the margin of failure. The level 0 one cares if you fail by 2 or less, and this is saying 3 or less. So it's sort of saying, like, you're getting really good at failing, but we'll reward you if you fail even more badly than before, which I think is a really nice detail. And it gives you a bigger reward for that failure as well, which I think is really cool.
Someone in the chat has asked if Fortune Favours the Oblivious is on the level 0 version.
Yeah, I think so.
So was he oblivious to the presence of that favour text?
That'd be nice to people in chat, Peter.
It's all right, it's Glyn. Okay, well, and I think what's worth saying here is if you have both of these cards in your hand, you could go to fight an enemy. Evade an enemy.
Evading them. Yeah.
It's not oops, it's Dumb Luck. You fail that test. The enemy goes onto the bottom of the deck, so you've got rid. And if you're playing solo, that's the same as defeating the enemy to an extent.
Yeah.
Then you could play Grit Your Teeth, and you get the extra action. So that's suddenly like failing a test. As someone else said in the chat, maybe Stella's worst moment is when she accidentally passes a test.
Yeah, quite possibly. Like, all you've done then is spend 3 resources and a couple of cards, and after that first action, you dust yourself off and go, right, now my turn. What was I going to do this turn?
I've got a buff for all my skills for the rest of the turn as well.
Yeah, that's a very Seeker thing to do, to say, I've actually not started yet. So I really like that option. I think we'll also keep an eye out for Survivor for ways for Stella to fail tests in Mythos to give herself 4 action turns, which is really nice. And I think what the Survivor starter deck, as far as I can tell, does is say, have you thought about this theme of failure? Think about it really carefully because there's more to be done with this theme in Survivor.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Yeah.
And obviously because you're based around failing, to an extent your stat levels matter less. You've obviously got these upgraded, like Dumb Luck upgrade, which means your evasion can be different from your target by a wider margin.
Yes. Yeah.
But it enables Stella to be hugely flexible.
Yes.
In how she operates. I think she's going to be super strong. I think she's, like we've seen survivors like Pete, I think is hugely flexible and very good. I think Stella's going to be kind of similar to that as well.
I think it's just going to open up such a space for sort of manipulating enemies on the board if you're able to fail and it not punish you. If failing fighting with them is a way of dealing with them is just incredible. That's sort of the Dumb Luck point of view. But then also just having that flexibility that you don't care if you succeed or fail because you can do something either way. That seems really powerful as well.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Right. Well, should we jump on to the next one?
Yeah. We'll see how we get on. We might not cover all the factions here because
that's fine. I'm having fun chatting to you and
done the classic thing of over preparing material, which is a good thing. Yeah,
but better than us twiddling our thumbs for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, next we're jumping on to the Mystic.
Okay. Yes.
We'll jump on to her, and we've got 2 cards here. Yeah. So actually, I'll tell you what. Do you want us to remind us of J Fine's ability, Frank?
I really do, and I'm just going to answer Toothball in the chat. The Innsmouth monster, the Loiger, just was monster traded. So you could Dumb Luck the Loiger onto the bottom of the deck, if that's what you're thinking. Yeah. So Jacqueline Fine has an ability. It's a reaction ability. When an investigator at your location would reveal a chaos token, they instead reveal 3 tokens, and they choose 2 non-tentacle tokens to put back in the bag, or 1 tentacle token to put back in the bag. So they reveal 3 and either pick 1 or pick 2 if one of them's a tentacle. So that's her ability.
And
go on.
I was going to say what we've picked are 2 cards here that rely on revealing tokens and getting a bonus based on revealing the special symbols.
Mm-hmm.
First, Voice of Ra, which you reveal 3 tokens, and for every special token you reveal, you get 2 additional resources. So a single one would give you 3, at which point it's an emergency cache.
Yeah.
But obviously with Jacqueline Fine and some of the other cards she's got, this could be who knows how many resources you end up getting.
Yeah. If you do all of your reveal extra ability revealing, use a grotesque statue and a dark prophecy and Jacqueline's ability, I think you can end up revealing 10 plus tokens from the bag, and then you're cancelling some of them, but you can do this careful selection of tokens to try and see as many of the important ones as you can.
I guess the difficult thing here, so when we were talking about this, it was pretty easy to nail the core faction themes that each of the starter investigators covered. I mean, very, very obviously, Stella is failing but succeeding. But Jacqueline was a bit more of a weird one. It's the idea of bag manipulation, really, or revealing multiple tokens. It's sort of, there's been cards that do that in Mystic, but how well do you think they come together in a cohesive whole for the cards in Jacqueline's pack?
Yeah, I think very well, and I think the word I used for you in our discussion was control. And the ability to pick 3 instead of 1 token just gives her such power to find the things she needs, because that's always been the risk with these bag manipulation cards, is they're great when you see the right tokens, but pretty lukewarm if you don't. If you play Voice of Ra and don't see any special symbols, you're just getting a resource for a card, which is not a good exchange.
Yeah.
And the flavor on Jacqueline is also awesome, which is I think it's I can change your fate or something like that, or I can rewrite fate. I can't remember exactly, but that in itself hints at something. This idea of like drawing multiple tokens from the bag is maybe like glimpsing alternate futures and picking the path that we're taking, which I think is really exciting as a sort of the theme explanation of why is it mystics can see multiple tokens. Yeah. It's an ability that we found hard to assess in the past, haven't we? It took a long time before we felt like Jim was really singing. He's another investigator who really likes to see multiple tokens.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I've just spotted a question in the chat from Gem Genie. So they've asked, this is a game I've kind of side-glanced at, interested, but the cost of getting into it and keeping up always concerned me, like Magic the Gathering got. And I can say straight away, it's not the same money sink as Magic the Gathering. Is this a valid concern, or have I misunderstood the concept? And what we're talking about at the moment, Gem Genie, are some of the starter decks, which might actually fit you really well. There's obviously a bit of a buy-in terms of getting the core set, and potentially a second core set. We're talking about Arkham Horror, the card game, the living card game, Sassy Helens, to give it its full title. Yeah. And these starter decks give you a good pool of cards that fit into one of the core faction themes. So that can, you could even maybe just keep playing based off having the starter deck. You do need to buy packs to be able to get the scenarios to play. But if you have a group of friends, which is probably the best way to play this, potentially only one of you needs to be picking up those story decks, and you can all play in them. Yeah.
The thing I'd add as well is that, I think I said earlier in the show, because it's a cooperative game, there's not the same requirement to keep up with the competitive scene. And we've got players who've been playing since the beginning but haven't bought everything. They've maybe stepped out for a cycle because they weren't interested, and then the next cycle the theme's really exciting to them and they buy into that. And then maybe they go, actually, no, I'm not playing for a bit now, or I want to replay what I already have. There's a lot of replayability in the game. It's got multiple difficulty settings. There's lots of different investigators. Most of the campaigns have branching paths. So it's almost like a role-playing game in that regard, where you can kind of tell a different story or things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of scope.
Brill. Should we jump on to the next investigator, Frank?
Yeah, and Joe just says, Jackie's flavor text is the future can be rewritten. We can jump on to the next investigator, but do you want to at least mention Parallel Fates, which is card?
Should I read it out?
Yeah, sure.
Look at the top 4 cards of the encounter deck. Reveal a random token from the Chaos bag. If it has a special symbol, shuffle those cards into the encounter deck. Otherwise, return them to the top of the encounter deck in any order.
That is the future being rewritten, surely.
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
control.
Yeah.
I like the flip side with Voice of Ra here. Voice of Ra, you want to see the special tokens, and Parallel Fates, you don't. So you maybe use Jacqueline's ability to mitigate against seeing special tokens.
Or maybe you do. Maybe you've drawn 3 Ancient Evils in the top 4 cards.
Yeah,
and you're true. We don't want to get 3 Doom next turn. Let's shuffle these back into the whole deck.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so. What I was going to add, actually, just on J Fine, is one of the issues with this play style of the multiple token revealing, and there's lots of cards that can feed into that. One of my favorite cards in the game, the Ritual Candles.
Yeah.
They all feed into it. People have built that in Jim, in Mateo. There's options for that, but your core engine revealing multiple tokens doesn't get online until you've got a card out that can do that. Say, if you're playing Olive McBride. And at the end of the day, she's an asset, and assets can be attacked in the game.
Yes.
So I think where Jacqueline helps this is that she gives you the ability to do that right from the get-go.
Wouldn't the cherry on top of that multiple token reveal style be an investigator who can reveal multiple tokens?
Yes.
Cool. Moving on.
Right, so we'll jump on to the Guardian decks. So this is Nathaniel Cho.
Yes, the boxer.
Yeah. We've picked 2 cards here that I really think... Well, I think they're both very Guardian-y. The first one I especially like. Should I jump straight in and talk about it?
Yeah, please do.
I think this one has been officially teased, lesson learned.
Yeah. Yes,
but I'll read it out anyway. So it's 1 cost, it's an Insight Spirit, and it has fast. Play after you take damage from an enemy attack. Discover 2 clues at your location. So I think one of the things about Guardians that not necessarily missing, but something that's a bit trickier is converting your health pool and your healing into tempo, into kind of advancing the game. And there are a few cards that do that, but I think this is just such a perfect example of how that could work, that I couldn't not talk about it when we're talking about kind of core Guardian ideas.
Yes.
And this, I think there's other cards in Nate and other cards in Guardian that invite you to be attacked by enemies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Things like, I can't remember whether. Anyway, doesn't matter. This, that's exactly how this works. You take the damage, you take the enemy off someone else, you take the damage instead, but it does get you 2 clues. Yeah, I just thought it was a really good example of that.
Yeah, I think you're completely right that it's like, I look at my amazing health pool, I have 9 health, aren't I tough? So what?
Yeah.
But what if I turn that health into a way of doing other things? So it's not just that I want to deal with enemies, but I'm actually going to make forward progress by being punched by enemies and things like that. I wish this had some flavor that was like, aha, now I know where you're hiding.
You punched some clues into your face.
Yeah, exactly. You think you're getting me, but I found out more. I also like that clearly the Guardian art, they have told all of the models who've posed for it to clench their left fist.
Yes, yeah.
He's wiping blood away from his own face, right? That's not a fist coming off the edge
of the screen, wearing the same jacket as him.
Yeah, the lesson he's learning is that he should pay more attention because he's getting punched in the face while he's looking the other way. Yeah. And then Get Over Here is another example of what you just described, the theme of Guardians wanting to tangle with the monsters of the mythos. And this is the leveled up version of it. So it's fast. You can play it at basically any point in the turn in any free window. You get to engage an enemy and fight the enemy, and you can choose a non-elite enemy up to 2 locations away, move that enemy to your location, engage it, and attack it. So you could do that with the Loiger if you're worried about the Loiger being on your heels and about to attack you. This is exactly, again, an example of what Guardians like to do, that they like to proactively take the fight to the mythos. And this, for 2 costs, packs so many actions together.
God, yeah, it's such efficiency. It's and it's that it can be played in a free window as well.
Yes.
So you could, now you're the rules expert, Frank. Could I play this after a hunter enemy moves?
Yeah, there's a window after hunter enemies move before hunter enemies attack.
Yeah. Just really get over here. Don't attack them. Attack me instead. And for any of those situations where your weak seeker Daisy has drawn an enemy, but you happen to be in a different location fighting an enemy, just boom, pull it straight over to you.
Yeah. The other thing I'd note from that enemy phase example that you just gave is that Nathaniel, who's the boxer, he does more damage when he plays fight events.
Yes.
It's limit once per phase. So if you have ways of fighting that aren't in the investigation phase, so in Mythos, enemy, or upkeep, you can do even more damage because you can try and trigger his ability multiple times in a round. So exactly what you just described of playing this after hunter enemies move could be a way of doing even more damage, which is really nice.
Yeah. No, just really good. We kind of didn't want to talk specifically about the cards too much, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I think these both hammer home that idea of Guardians as the clues in the name, really, as a class that protects the other characters, while at the same time being able to take a beating as well. So physically resistant, but also not universally physically resistant. I guess there are kind of squishier Guardians out there, but ones that are able to protect the rest of their team effectively.
Yeah, I think just it really hammers home the idea that Guardians are like that clenched fist baby meme.
Yes.
Really what they're leaning into. They're just killing it by clenching a fist and gritting their teeth. Yeah.
Just checking the time, Frank. We've got 20 minutes, and there's a couple of things we want to do before we wrap up. Should we look at maybe one more?
Yeah.
And then we'll jump on to the last couple of items.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Right, well, the next is probably the easiest and the most direct. This is the Seeker. And I think at least one of these cards is a already existing card that you can came out in the last cycle.
Not this version didn't.
Oh no, it didn't, did it?
Yeah. This is a downgrade, which is one of the
yeah.
exciting things for the starter decks for experienced players, that there might be cards in the decks that are versions of cards you've seen before.
Someone has just asked for the rogue. Well, we can touch very briefly on the rogue at the end of this
episode. Yeah. So if you're a fan of the cast and are thinking, is this the only discussion we're going to do about the starter decks? We've got so much more discussion lined up that we won't be doing now at the Expo. We just wanted to be kind of taking this helicopter view of different detailed things and showing off some cards for today, because it's the Expo. It's a slightly different experience. So don't worry if you're a long-time listener. And if you're new to the cast and you're desperate to hear more of our Arkham chat, you can find us at Drawn to the Flame podcast, wherever you get your podcast. So Seeker, Harvey is our Seeker investigator, Harvey Walters, and he's all about drawing cards. And this card on the right, Vault of Knowledge, is actually his signature card. So only he can run it. It gives him a bigger hand size, which is nice if he's drawing loads of cards. And after you successfully investigate, you can exhaust Vault of Knowledge and choose an investigator at your location to draw a card. So if he does what he likes doing, which is investigating, he gets more cards for it. And his ability is when you draw cards, you draw more cards. So he can draw more cards just for investigating. So he loves rummaging in dusty old tomes and finding out esoteric knowledge and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. His inbuilt ability is to draw an extra card, right? Whenever he draws a card.
Yeah.
So I guess the difficulty I have is that there's lots of good Seeker cards. So drawing lots of them is good, but there's maybe not as many that directly need you to build into that play style. In order for them to really shine. And it's nice to see quite a few of those cards coming out in the Harvey deck. Mm-hmm. And we've picked a very typical example of what that card might look like with extensive research.
Yeah.
So, if you have eight cards in your hand, which is your standard hand size, this will cost you 4. So it's pay 4, discover 2 clues at your location.
Yeah.
Which seems pretty good.
Yeah, if you can go over 8 cards, then this is really good. If you can have 12 cards in hand, it's free.
Yeah. Have you ever managed to get to 12 cards in hand, Frank?
Yes, I have. I've sent photographs of it. Yeah. So what this really reminds me of is we had this similar discussion about rogue investigators and resources. And, the aim of Arkham is not to finish the scenario with the most resources. I know you like to joke that it is. But
yes.
And we saw in the last cycle some cards that really rewarded rogues for having a big pool of resources. It was actually 2 cycles ago. So things like Well Connected and Money Talks. And we've had the same question about Seekers drawing lots of cards. It's like, well, so what? Even if you've got loads of cards in hand, that doesn't actually help you much more unless you're going to commit all of those cards using the icons on the card to sort of save you in clutch tests. And with extensive research, some of the other cards we see in the Harvey deck, we start to see this like reward for having loads and loads of cards in hand. I think there's a nice little symmetry here that we were talking for Innsmouth about what a cards in hand mean and why would you want lots of cards in hand. And Harvey starts to answer that he's just got a really big brain.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't care about the Loiger, does he?
He absolutely
He's
doesn't know.
To get out of the undertow 5 times in a turn. He doesn't mind.
He's just there, like, throwing pages of his book into the Loiger's face, protecting everyone else in the party.
Yeah, I'll just lose this knowledge. I don't care. I'll lose this knowledge. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
I've got a vault of it.
We've always known that Seekers were the faction of card draw, but having card draw not just be a thing that they were good at, but a thing that they now maybe actively want to pursue because it gives them benefits, I think is a really nice addition to the theme of the faction. And really nice angle for them to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think I'm looking forward to getting my hands on Harvey because I think he's pretty straightforward to build a good deck for. Mm-hmm. I don't know, maybe I'm making a rod for my own back there. You put in lots of card draw and you put in lots of cards that are good if you've got a big hand.
Yes.
And then away you go.
Yeah, I think having first looked all of the Investigator starter decks, it looks like there's probably 2 or 3 ways you can play and upgrade each deck. And that's also what's exciting about them, that as you're looking at these fairly small packs of cards in the scheme of things, you're going, okay, I can see how this fits with that. Vault of Knowledge fits really nicely with extensive research, so I could really lean into drawing all the cards and then playing extensive research for free, and that would be my goal with the deck. And immediately then it gives some kind of guidance to a newer player or some kind of challenge to an experienced player of a way to play. That seems really appealing.
Exactly, yeah. And I think one of the things I've always appreciated in investigators is if they're direct, they're a bit easier to put together the deck for. And I think also for newer players, they don't have access to the extensive card pool. You might say to a new player kind of comes to you and says, well, what should I put in my deck? And you say, oh, well, obviously put Charisma in there. Oh, I haven't got any cards from the Dunwich cycle. It's all out of stock. With these packs, they give you, I think, a good core of cards in each faction, so that you can then start to pick up the cards from the next cycle, or dive back through a cycle that's already come out and start picking up those cards gradually, without worrying that there's big holes in your card pool.
Yes, yeah.
Especially and
core, don't they?
Exactly, yeah, and on a per faction basis as well. So like you will have Seeker card draw cards, you will have a Guardian resource card. You're not going to be struggling in those areas once you've picked up the starter decks. So I think that's maybe one of the real benefits of that.
Odin asks in the chat, just got here, what game is this? This is Arkham Horror, the card game, the living card game. And we've just got about less than 15 minutes left of this. We've just been showing off some cards from the new Investigator starter packs, which are coming out next Thursday and Friday, and then ways for newer players to get into Arkham Horror if they haven't already. So, Peter, I think we should move into our last topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, should I go back to the webcams?
Yes.
Oh, that's perfect. You're still there.
I cunningly turned myself back on.
Good.
And I've still got bids on, which is also appropriate, given that this is family.
Yes, absolutely. So the last thing we want to talk about, I guess, is a bit about the Blob.
Yeah, the Blob that ate everything.
Yeah, so we've got a few people in the chat who are maybe dabbling a little bit with Arkham Horror, the card game, the living card game. They know what it is, maybe they don't even know what it is. So typically what you do when you play is you buy packs that have scenarios in them. You sit down with your friends and you play the scenario. So it plays 1 to 4 players. However, there are some certain packs, epic multiplayer events, which allow different groups to play together in the same game. And there's a couple of these around. There's a couple of years ago, the Labyrinth of Lunacy came out. That is an incredible scenario, but quite difficult to organise, I would say, because you need a relatively specific set of circumstances. Really good fun. If you can get to play that, I'd highly recommend it. More recently, the Blob that ate everything came out. And this was a scenario that was run at Gen Con last year for the first time.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was played with, how many players? 90?
Yeah, something like that. Something huge.
Yeah. And it's a kind of, it's got a 50s B-movie kind of vibe to it. Subject BL08, the Blob. And it really does eat everything. Anything and everything will be eaten. So we're running a virtual version of that Blob this afternoon. We're also running it tomorrow as well. If you want to join in and you've got all, you know how to play the game, and you've got a way to play, the details to join in with that are on the Virtual Expo website. And there's, it's not like you had to have registered 2 weeks ago or get tickets or anything. You can still join in now. We did a bit of a guide at the beginning, and we'll put a note on how to do it just as we sign off, I think.
Yeah.
It's really good fun. I would highly recommend it if you've at a loss for anything else to do today or tomorrow. Frank, what did you want to talk about on the Blob?
Yeah, I just want to say for the timings for that, before we dive in, 4 p.m, so in 45 minutes is today's Blob, and 11 a.m. is tomorrow's Blob. That's both in British time. And registration runs for the half an hour before that. So right at the end of our live show will be registration for the 4 p.m. Blob, and at 10:30 tomorrow will be registration. So you can go and look on the Expo website. There's time to find it, and because you're playing in your own home, as long as you have a copy of the Blob, you'll be good to go, which is pretty good. And yeah, I just see the link has gone up in the chat as well. So what I wanted to talk about just briefly as our closing thoughts, I suppose, for 5 minutes, is our top choices of player cards to take on the Blob, and probably more generally to take on these kind of event scenarios where you're building a deck, you maybe don't even know who you're playing with, and you turn up at the UK Games Expo in person in previous years or virtually this year. What kind of thing do you immediately think of to put in your deck, Peter?
Well, you've really asked two questions there. For the player-specific cards in the Blob, I guess my biggest recommendation is anything that deals automatic damage.
Yeah.
So whether that's something like a Dynamite Blast or a Beat Cop. Can I just say why? I think if anyone's going to join in, they'll probably already know the scenario. There's when you're attacking the Blob and you get limited windows to do that, it gets more difficult over the turn the more damage you deal during that turn.
Yeah.
So if you deal a big chunk of damage as your first action, deal 5 or 6 damage as your first action, the next test is difficulty 5 or 6. So it's nice to have a tool in your back pocket which deals some automatic damage.
Yeah. Yeah. You could even have that as a player who doesn't normally do other damage, so you're not worrying about your combat, but then you've got sneak attacks or small favors or things like that. You can suddenly churn out and do the damage you need just when it's as icing on the cake, as it were.
Yeah.
I think
go on.
No, go on.
Well, I was going to say just your more general question, what do you take to a convention? I would say you're best off sticking to a kind of a broad faction strengths kind of deck, relatively focused in an area. So if hopefully you've had a chance to communicate with your team, so you're able to say, well, I can take a Cluer, I can take a fighter, I can take a mystic who can do a bit of everything, and then really build into that specialization. Because what you don't want to do is have like 4 players who can sort of get a couple of clues and then no one's able to really do it over the course of the scenario.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably my number one tip.
And I would probably chase that with don't scrimp on surviving. Because a lot of scenarios are long, and that means that you get beaten up in them in a way that you might not just playing a quick scenario at home where you're like, okay, I'll just rush through it. I don't mind if the scenario hits me a bit. I'll power through. A lot of these event scenarios like Labyrinths, like the Blob, really want to damage you and hurt you and slow you down. So having ways of either healing damage in horror or mitigating damage in horror or soaking damage in horror can be really useful. We've seen Carolyn turn up at events a lot, haven't we? She's really useful. She's the psychologist. She's a really useful investigator to have because she keeps the whole party sane. That can be really empowering for everyone else. So then just the other small thing about that would be don't forget to protect your willpower and agility, which are normally the defensive stats. They're the ones that will get pounded normally by the encounter deck.
Yeah. And actually that applies in the Blob as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's Blob specific. Don't forget your willpower and agility.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We sort of forget, it's kind of classic Arkham, isn't it?
Yeah.
That some cycles don't care about that as much, but for these event scenarios, they seem to really target those defensive stats and expect you to have thought about how you combat the mythos in that way.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I know someone in the chat has said it's a good opportunity to bring to play with the big XP cards. And I like that actually, and I think what you can also do, and this applies to standalones, but I guess even more so for the convention kind of plays, is really build a deck around them as well. So if you want to use your flamethrower, or you want to say, right, this is the time I'm going to do double or nothing flamethrower, you can really build that deck without having to worry about building it over the course of a campaign.
Yeah,
you can say, right, I'm going to put all the bits I need in for this really solid combination of cards, and I'm really going to just ace everything with my blessed flamethrower, and I'm going to be the best at fighting monsters with this.
Yeah, I like it a lot. There's normally one crazy thing you want to do with every investigator. So being able
Yeah.
to go, great, I've got 49 XP to play with here. I'm going to go for it.
49, no.
Yeah.
It's sort of counter to the first bit of advice I gave, which was don't try and be too complicated.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought when you said that as well, the other thing, if you're focusing on doing a specific thing, so say I'm getting clues, that's my job. You want to make sure that you've got a few ways of doing that within your deck, which is just general good deck building, but particularly in the blob that ate everything. If it eats some of the ways you get clues, you want to make sure you have other ways of getting clues.
Yeah.
If your deck has one flamethrower in and nothing else, because you're going to play the flamethrower, and then it gets eaten,
Yeah.
you're going to feel really bitter.
Just to underline, the blob will eat anything.
Yeah,
And everything.
and everything, exactly. In the subset of things that the blob will eat,
Everything.
everything. That
Yeah.
includes everything. Yeah.
Right. Well,
We've the chat saying it ate my voice once, and someone else saying it ate our food.
Are you sure that was the blob?
That wasn't someone else at your table. Yeah.
Right. We've got 4 minutes left. So what I want to do, Frank, is we will blast through our admin stuff at the end.
Yeah.
To remind people, you're still able to sign up for the blob. The details are on the Expo website. So if you're curious about that, do it. I can highly recommend it. You can even play solo and just send your results in. There is an FFG Discord, and the link to that is on the Expo website. And there's a special chat channel there for Arkham events. And everyone else who's playing in the blob's going to be in that channel. And we're going to try and broadcast some stuff on that server as well during it as well. So yeah, that's going to be really good fun. You'll feel like part of the team. You get a bit of that convention feel there. So I can highly recommend that. If people want to get in touch with us or had never heard of Arkham Horror, as we said at the beginning, our podcast is Drawn to the Flame. We'll be able to find us on all of your usual podcasting locations. Episode 33, we did a special... Look at that. We did a special introduction to the card game for someone who's interested to get into it, wants to know what to get first. Go and listen to that. What else do I want to mention? Yes, there's a special badge you can get in the Twitch chat, and I think UK Games Expo will be posting a link on how to do that in the chat. So if you want a special badge, Twitch badge, go ahead and do it. Or I think it's a badge for the virtual expo, and you get, I think you get the badge for or you emote for the channel as well. You get by watching and claiming the points. There we go. There's the link. Thank you, I guess, should we say some thank yous?
Yeah, let's say some thank yous.
Thank you to FFG, first of all. Were you about to thank someone?
FFG, yeah.
There we go. We're as of one mind, Frank. Yeah, one mind, two men. Thank you to FFG for sharing all of the cards for us to talk about. It was fun doing the encounter cards. It's a bit more of a sensitive area because obviously people want to experience those fresh. So, if you want to send some feedback on how you found those, we're very happy to hear it. Thank you to the team at Asmodee who asked us on to run the events and to do this live show. Thank you so much to the Virtual Expo team. I cannot imagine how stressful this day would be with random nerds doing random things at various points and just crossing their fingers and hoping they do the right thing at the right time. So thank you so much. Thank you for being in the chat and moderating, and thank you for answering our questions over the past week and getting us up and running.
And then I guess finally, thank you for all the people who've tuned in and listened to us talk about Arkham Horror and joined in the chat. Really appreciate it. It's really fun to do the expo virtually with you. If we can't be face to face, at least we can all be looking at the same thing at the same time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and I guess that's everything, really. We've finished with 30 seconds to spare.
Wow.
You got anything you want to share within the last 30 seconds, Frank?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we've got so much coming up on the cast itself. It feels like we're just about to get diving back into all sorts of different things. So yeah, if you're fans of Drawn to the Flame, thanks so much for your support. Really exciting time for the game.
Someone wants to see the rogue cards, so I'm going to put them up, and you can have a few seconds before I end the stream.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Bye.